Welcome to the Virtual Realms YouTube channel. I'm Ranger 1. And this is a replay turned in by Captain Badger. Now, he's turned in several replays to me, and they've all been pretty good. The two I want to show you, at least excerpts from today, are simulator battles in War Thunder. I don't get very many of them turned into me, and I do like featuring them from time to time. You get a feel from a simulator battle that it's hard to get in any other type of gameplay footage, especially if you take it from the driver's point of view. It's a real sense of immersion that is sometimes lacking in other forms of game replays. Now, featuring a replay that is done in simulator mode in War Thunder has its own peculiarities that you have to deal with, especially when you're selecting how to do your edits. Simulator battles can be a little bit slow at the beginning of the engagement. Time needs to be invested in the match for things to set up properly and for the enemy forces to close into a spot where the altercation can take place. So you have to watch how you handle it a little bit. And then again, you get the payoff of, well, scenes like this. Moving through this snow-covered pine forest. You just don't get that sense of being there in any other type of game mode. But there are drawbacks other than that. Sometimes, like right now, the footage can be perhaps a little too realistic. And some people may even cause a little bit of motion sickness as we're going across this furrowed field. So we're going to cut away from this right now. But yes, the slower pace of battle at the beginning allows you to get a sense of being in the player's head at the time, as he makes his decisions about where he's going to go, how he's going to set up his attack, where he's going to position himself on the field of battle. Right now, Captain Badger is maneuvering into a very strategic point between the C and B capture points. It's a very likely avenue for the enemy team to take to get to the one capture point that Captain Badger's team is holding currently. Of course, he has to be cautious. This Dickermax has very little armor. The only thing it does have is a very big gun, and he's got a good chance of killing the enemy before they have a chance to kill him if he can get off the first shot. This is, of course, especially important when you're running a tank destroyer, but really, in a simulator battle, it's important for any type of vehicle out there on the battlefield. But when a good player like Captain Badger does make wise choices at the beginning of the match, you sometimes get some very, very nice combat footage that looks a little something like this. Yes, as you can see, careful planning and positioning can be especially crucial in a simulator battle, even when things get up close and personal. And most of the replays that Captain Badger sends in clearly show that he has a knack for it. But this next battle? It's not one of those. In this battle, Captain Badger's driving out something a little bit different. The 94 KM ZIS-12. It's what passes for an anti-aircraft vehicle for the Russian nationality in War Thunder at certain tiers. So they have better ones also once you get higher up in the tiering system, but you see an awful lot of these and the close relatives of it running around in a lot of War Thunder matches. While the Dicker Max that he was piloting in the last game that you watched has at least some armor and a really good gun, this little anti-aircraft vehicle has none of that. It has literally no armor, and it's got a pair of 25mm anti-aircraft guns slapped on the back. For those of you who don't play War Thunder, it's the equivalent of getting into your great-grandfather's flatbed Ford, slapping a couple of guns on the back, and driving it into the middle of a war zone, and expecting to survive. Situational awareness and a good head for positioning yourself strategically are imperative if you want to make it through alive to the end of a match. Anything you encounter, including a lamppost, can be a serious obstacle to this vehicle. So, your goal is to position yourself to fire on enemy aircraft while avoiding enemy tanks and other vehicles, because to them, you're easy meat. You would think this would be Captain Badger's cup of tea, and in fact, he does amazingly well in this match, but not really in the way that he normally does. Oh, it starts out well enough. He picks a good spot away from enemy tanks and with a good eye on the sky where he can plot the courses of the enemy aircraft coming in around him, draw them toward him, and take them out of the picture. He's got a pretty good angle of fire here. There's a German ground attacker coming in at him, an HS-129B, I believe. He's going to be coming between those two pieces of buildings up ahead. He's emptying his clip, reloading, and getting ready to unload on the German aircraft as it passes overhead. They exchange fire and the duck goes down. That was a little bit of a near thing. That duck puts out a lot of firepower, but Captain Badger has survived, and almost immediately another target presents itself. There's a Stuka over there. Probably saw the tracers coming up from Captain Badger's guns, and Captain Badger will open fire on it with everything he's got. That building's getting in the way. The Stuka's trying to be cagey, but that doesn't work out very well for him, and he gets his wings blown off for his trouble. He's done pretty well so far. He's even managed to capture the A point on his way to this position, but there is no rest for the wicked. That's a BF-109G, and he's packing a bomb. So Captain Badger immediately opens fire on him. He gets the BF-109G's attention and a couple of hits, but that's not going to stop him unless he hits him dead on. So he does. Takes off a wing, and the bomb overshoots. Watching a simulator battle with this vehicle is, to me, even more interesting and engaging than most. You can just, well, almost imagine Captain Badger as the gunner, sitting on the back of that vehicle, totally exposed, waiting to hear the whine of incoming bullets that could come from literally any direction at any time. Hands sweaty on the grips of his AA gun. And in the cab, the poor driver who's sitting there, stressed out of his mind, unable to do anything to protect himself or his vehicle other than drive madly at perhaps a moment's notice if danger threatens. Quite possibly calming his nerves with a bottle of vodka. For the purposes of this video, let's call that somewhat inebriated driver Dimitri. While Dimitri opens up a fresh bottle, Captain Badger's been busy opening up on an ME-410 at relatively long range, landing hit after hit, pummeling the fuselage of the aircraft, finally setting it on fire, and eventually will bring it down. That was some pretty good shooting. Well, that's Captain Badger's fourth aerial kill of the match. But for the moment, the skies overhead are clear. He doesn't have a target, although he can hear the sound of intense fighting going on literally all around him. Captain Badger will hold position here for a couple more minutes, but when it becomes apparent that no more targets are going to venture overhead, he orders Dimitri to put the bottle down, get the truck in gear, and fall back to the A capture point. There's an open square there, and it might give them a little bit better opportunity to find a target. Dimitri complies, and sure enough, as soon as they enter the square, they begin to see aircraft overhead. They'll pull up into a defensive position and watch the fight unfold above them. It looks like an IL-2 Russian ground attack aircraft being hotly pursued by another Bf-109G. Well, the IL-2 is fairly heavily armored for an aircraft, but it's not going to last long against that Bf-109 unless somebody gives him a hand. And looks like they're going to come into position right over Captain Badger's head. Captain's first burst damages the fighter's flap. His second burst catches the fighter on fire, but he still remains airborne. That IL-2 is in serious trouble, but fortunately he managed to spot that stream of friendly tracer fire coming up from the ground and is going to swing his IL-2 around and try and draw the Bf-109 back over Captain Badger's position. It's a desperate gamble, but since that fighter refuses to burn up or crash, well, it's really the only option the IL-2 pilot has to try and remain alive. And here they come, they're swinging around. IL-2 is not moving very fast, but that Bf-109 is not flying very well either. No doubt, the drunken Dimitri is sitting in the front seat, cracking open another bottle to toast the patriotic Russian IL-2 pilot, and pleading with Captain Badger to save their comrade. The captain's steady hand and cool head will indeed be sufficient to bring down the German airplane. However, it will not be in time to save the Russian pilot. They both go down in flames. Now, I've spent quite some time setting the stage and telling the tale of the drunken driver Dimitri. And the only reason why I've done so is because there is no other rational explanation for what happens next. We can only assume that Dimitri, in a vodka-fueled rage, ignores the orders of the calm, cool, and collected Captain Badger and heads directly to the enemy-held C capture point as quickly as he can, clipping a lamppost on the way. It is entirely possible that Dimitri had a few drinks before this battle even started. But it's obvious that the driver was acting under his own volition, because this course of action is not one that Captain Badger would normally take. Headlong rushing directly toward the enemy in such a flimsy vehicle. Well, they make it there in one piece, and lo and behold, the capture point is already held by an enemy Tiger tank that he can't penetrate with his ammunition. The most he can do is try and go for a weak point, like the barrel of that gun, to try and get the Tiger's attention, if nothing else. Maybe do a little light damage, and the Tiger's not alone. Dimitri will floor it, narrowly avoiding the instant destruction of his flatbed truck. However, everyone is either dead or wounded, except, of course, for Dimitri. We can only surmise that Captain Badger reasserts his authority over the drunken Dimitri as the truck heads back towards safer territory. Once they get to a reasonably secure point, they will stop to perform necessary repairs and to administer first aid to the survivors. Once that is all complete, they will finally drift in the direction of friendly lines, driving behind them, and then eventually move forward to try and link up with friendly tanks for some measure of protection and to offer them aerial protection as well. At last, Allied tanks dead ahead. They're safe. Or are they? From the direction of their own spawn point, enemy fire comes in, wounding Dimitri. Now, it's debatable whether Dimitri could even feel it in his drunken stupor, but it is enough to cause him to whip the truck around and crash into a building, ending up in the worst possible position next to another Tiger tank. A Tiger tank that's not alone. Fortunately, friendly fire manages to take out the Panther and frees up Captain Badger to focus all fire on the enemy Tiger's gun, eventually helping to force a cannon breach the next time the Tiger tank fires its weapon. They've been extremely fortunate that the two tanks didn't turn their guns on them. They were completely helpless and would have been destroyed instantly. So Captain Badger will work over the tank tracks of the Tiger, hoping to incapacitate it while they make their escape. Again, friendly fire comes to the rescue, finishing off the Tiger tank, and I think that Captain Badger must have had enough because he assumes the driver's position, forcing Dimitri over, possibly shoving their dead comrade out the passenger side door, and beats feet for the friendly tanks that are advancing up the road behind them. He's going to plant himself in the sea capture point and pretty much sit out the rest of this match, and I don't blame him. Now, if it sounds like to you that I'm kind of giving Captain Badger some stick, I'm not. In the email he sent in with his replay, he said that he was laughing hysterically all the way through this match, particularly at the end, and I can see why. That was some pretty creative gameplay on his part. So, if people have a tendency to be a little bit critical of his performance in this particular match, I felt it necessary to develop the character of Dimitri so that he was a convenient scapegoat instead of our adventuresome Captain Badger. Captain Badger walks away with 5 aerial kills, 2 assists, and a base capture. Pretty good match, and somehow he managed to live through it. Be sure to swing by and check out his YouTube channel. I'll put a link in the description below. I wanted to take a minute to thank you all for sticking with me, for all the thumbs up recently, and especially for all the subscriptions that we've recently gotten. I really appreciate that, and it's helping the channel grow. So, until I see you guys again, good hunting. Thanks for watching. I hope you were entertained. If you liked the video, please remember to subscribe. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you. And I'll see you next time.